What's up, Vikings fans? Welcome in the Vikings Now. I'm your host for today's show, Patrick Seatman. And on today's show, we're going to be checking out some of the recent Vikings trade rumors around the 2023 NFL Draft. There's been some NFL Draft experts that have suggested the Vikings trading up for one of the top quarterbacks in this year's draft. We'll get into all that and more. But if you guys are excited about the NFL Draft, give me a like on today's video. I'm pumped. Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It's going to be a ton of fun here at the Chat Sports office. So if you're excited too, give me a like on today's video, trying to see if we can get up to 200 likes. And then also, the NFL Draft will be live here on Chat Sports. We'll be live at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Thursday. Go check it out. You'll be seeing that video in your feed. Make sure you click on it and hang out with us during the whole NFL Draft. We will have you guys covered. So in the latest Draft Network mock draft, it had the Vikings drafting Will Levis. And you may be thinking, maybe Will Levis fell to the Vikings at 23. No, this mock draft had the Vikings trading up to number 2 overall with the Houston Texans and taking Will Levis. And I think the overarching problem and the biggest problem with this is the Vikings have very limited draft capital, and this would require a haul of draft picks. This isn't a situation where even the Vikings are trading up with the Eagles to 10. No, they have the Vikings going all the way up to number 2. And as we know, the Vikings only have 5 picks in this year's draft. So assuming if they would kind of take this haul and go get a Will Levis, this will probably take 2, 3, even maybe 4 first-round picks for the Vikings to move from 23 all the way up to number 2 to go get their guy. But anyways, Will Levis, his whole career at Kentucky had just over 5,000 yards, 43 touchdowns, 23 interceptions, and 65.7% completion percentage. I think Will Levis is a very interesting prospect. He's got a big arm. He's got decent athletic ability, but it's kind of the production didn't really meet his athletic standard. I'll be getting into all this and more, but I'll ask you guys this on today's pinned comment. Straight up, do you want to draft Will Levis? Maybe it's not the Vikings taking him at number 2, but no matter how they get there, however the Vikings get there and draft Will Levis, would you do it? Give me a D for draft or give me a P for pass. YouTube's going to throw you an ad break your way right now. Sit back, let it play, and answer today's pinned comment. I think if you're going to move on and go kind of take all those draft picks and move and go get a guy like Will Levis, this is an all-in move. And this is not just an all-in move for the franchise. This is an all-in move for the players. And I do think this is a move you make. People will get extended or people will get fired. Kevin O'Connell, Vikings head coach. If this works out, he'll get an extension. If this doesn't work out, he'll most likely be fired. Second-year GM, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. If this works out for him, he will get an extension and he'll be praised. If this doesn't work out for him, he will necessarily be fired. And I just think this always goes back to the Kirk Cousins conversation because Kirk, listen, he puts up phenomenal numbers. Over 4,000 yards the past 4 seasons. He's always had a really strong touchdown to interception ratio. And he's kind of always been that guy where he's good but not great. And it always comes down to, is Kirk the guy to get you over the hump? My overall kind of analysis of this and kind of going through the draft process and all these rumors about the Vikings trading up to draft a quarterback, I think Kirk Cousins is kind of being undervalued amongst Vikings fans. People forget this is a guy that won 13 games last year with having the worst defense in the NFL. Most quarterbacks in the league, that just doesn't really happen. And Kirk Cousins did that. I mean, he legit dragged an awful defense who gave up countless game-winning drives where he would have to go and answer them or even just go get another game-winning drive. That's why he led the league in them last season. Kirk Cousins, I think he's getting undervalued a little bit. I just don't necessarily think Vikings fans are kind of grasping that if they do go trade for a rookie quarterback and they trade up and kind of move all that draft capital, the grass may not always be greener. It would be an incredible risk trading up to go draft Will Levis. That's why I think maybe sometimes in a situation like that, stand pat. You got Kirk Cousins, and he's a heck of a good quarterback. But let me know what you guys think. Do Vikings fans undervalue Kirk Cousins? Give me a Y for yes or give me an N for no down in the comment sections. I'm almost leaning towards yes on this one. I think he is sort of becoming undervalued amongst Vikings fans. But let me know. Y for yes, N for no. Now we got to talk about drafting Anthony Richardson, another quarterback for the Vikings that could be the successor to Kirk Cousins. But in this one, the Vikings wouldn't need to give up any draft capital. Peter King in his latest mock draft had Anthony Richardson falling all the way to the Vikings in his latest mock draft. First off, I just don't think this would happen, but I got more thoughts on this in a second. But if the Vikings do draft Will Levis or Anthony Richardson, they're going to be rocking one of these draft hats here, and we got them going on for a great deal for you guys right now. Head over to chatsports.com/Vikings draft. The draft's coming up on this Thursday. If you want to be looking sweet at your draft day party with all your friends, go over there, chatsports.com/Vikings draft. Get your hat today. But talking about Anthony Richardson, yes, I would be absolutely all in on the Vikings taking Anthony Richardson if they wouldn't have to trade up at all. I think Anthony Richardson, of course, he's the biggest boom or bust prospect in this year's NFL draft. And a comparison that's been thrown out a lot is actually former Vikings quarterback Dante Culpepper. A lot of people think more Cam Newton with Anthony Richardson, but the size of Anthony Richardson actually matches up better with a guy like Dante Culpepper. But the number one red flag with Anthony Richardson is that completion percentage, 53.8 his senior year at Florida, just over 2,500 yards. But the dual threat ability is the reason why most people want the Vikings to take Anthony Richardson. 654 yards on the ground, 25 total touchdowns, and 9 interceptions at his senior year at Florida. I think he's definitely a very interesting prospect. That boom or bust is definitely the main point and the main takeaway with a guy like Anthony Richardson. But this is what Peter King had to say about the Vikings potentially drafting Anthony Richardson. He said this: easily could go earlier, as high as 4 to Indianapolis, but the Vikings would be an intriguing spot for the raw Richardson. Kirk Cousins has one playoff win in 5 Viking seasons. The math is not in Cousins' favor. This is year 6. He will have made $185 million as a Viking and will be seeking $45 million plus to re-sign after this season, to be sure, guaranteed. Who would be surprised if the Vikings wanted a fresh start in 2024 if this is another one of those years? And I totally agree. And one of the draft comps that I actually saw thrown out there a lot for Anthony Richardson is a guy like Josh Allen. If you look at their relative athletic scores here, they're extremely similar. Obviously, Anthony Richardson a little bit faster than a guy like Josh Allen. The 40 time for Richardson was a 4.43 on the screen right now. Richardson is on the left and Josh Allen is on the right. And the 40 time for Josh Allen was 4.75. But the point being is these big-time quarterbacks who may not be as refined and taking like the intermediate and short routes and hitting like the simple slant concepts and just all those kind of basic route combinations, but they do have the home run ability, the home run threat that Josh Allen has. I think Richardson has something very similar. If you see right now on your screen, the relative athletic score, they are very, very similar. But I ask you guys this is a tough question, but I'll throw it your way. Will Richardson boom or bust? Give me a 1 for boom or give me a 2 for bust down in the comment section. I'm actually leaning towards Anthony Richardson will boom. I'm a huge fan of Anthony Richardson in this year's draft. I think he does have that boom or bust ability like we've been talking about, but I'm willing to take a risk on a guy like that, and especially if he were to fall to number 23 overall to the Minnesota Vikings. The support system the Vikings could give him with a guy like Jefferson, having a star wide receiver, if not the best wide receiver in the NFL, having a strong tight end in TJ Hawkinson, for when he is getting pressured, to have him as an easy check down, as an easy target. Then you still have, obviously, the weapon as Dalvin Cook, KJ Osborne, Kene Wangu, Ty Chandler, a lot of chess pieces you can kind of help mold in Anthony Richardson. And also, you have your 2 tackles taken care of. Christian Darrisaw on the left side, Brian O'Neill on the right side. I think if you were going to be kind of brought into the Viking system, have him sit for a year and have that support system kind of groom him to be a star quarterback in the NFL, I think Anthony Richardson could be a franchise quarterback for the Vikings if that were to happen. And also, I do think it's the last ride for Kirk Cousins. I think unless the Vikings were to make an NFC title game or make the Super Bowl, I believe this is Kirk's last year in the NFL. Personally, I just think Kirk Cousins, I think the Vikings are kind of not sick of him, but they're kind of done with his time. It's kind of that conversation with Kirk that it's always been. Is he a good quarterback or is he a great quarterback? Well, listen, he's 35 and he's not getting any younger. I think we know who Kirk Cousins is, and I think that will always be the conversation around him. Get a guy like Anthony Richardson, he could definitely be great. But give me a follow on Twitter if you guys haven't already. I'll be talking about the Vikings draft this entire offseason and leading up to it. I'm very excited to see what the Vikings are going to take. I'm hoping they do just sit there at 23 and draft a cornerback. But if they do trade up for a quarterback, we'll have you guys covered. See you guys next time. Let's go Vikes.